we've got people and processes. So once again, we've got the problem that people came to us with and the sort of underlying solution here. 79% of people are struggling to hire data professionals. And I think on my next slide, this aligns perfectly with what the industry is also saying. We know that demand for data people has outstripped the availability since 2016. So for the last half a decade, there's been way too many people looking for data people, but not being able to find them. And in about 70% of cases, what we found has actually worked is that you use external help to get you to a solution quite quickly, and then you can hand over to a smart mid-level person, as opposed to finding really senior people, which are really expensive, or as opposed to hiring junior people and then having to train them up. If you have an agency or external help or whoever you need to get in to get you to a solution quite quickly, you can normally hand over to mid-level person who will grow with the company and who is going to know your business use case as well. We always advise that internal people are the lifeblood of all analytics, and we never say that an agency can replace that. 32% of people had a problem with slow data adoption. We're primarily looking at sort of business use cases there. In terms of the problem tends to be a small centralized team, that they have multiple stakeholders, they have multiple people asking for things, and as we've already sort of talked about, then they have to build a load of stuff. All of that stuff needs maintenance, and they're not adding value. And typically we see the solution here is that you start to embed analytics within teams. So you have a data person within marketing, within finance, and so on and so forth, and they are sort of your first safeguard in terms of prioritizing data projects, in safeguarding people's time at that point. It is quite difficult normally to go from a small centralized team, especially if you're a standalone person, to doing things where you're embedding them in different teams and different departments, but that seems to be the most successful route. And then last but not least, just a general lack of data knowledge from business users. So this typically tends to be that they don't know what takes time. Data modeling is probably the number one thing where it's just like this dark art that people don't understand, that, hey, this is going to take 4 weeks. They just think, well, dashboards are really quick, and why can't I get that number there? And they don't understand all of the things that go into that and the QA process behind that. But if they do understand that, it can make a huge difference in terms of safeguarding time and making sure that the requests are sort of valuable to the business. And then the best solution for this is some sort of basic level of training. We also really like data champions, so people that don't necessarily need to know data inside in and out, but they know enough to be able to understand where the priorities are and what takes time. And I started my data journey as a data champion, as a marketer before, and then grew really interested in it. So that's where you find your future data people, because you find people who know the business side of things really well, and then if they can learn a bit about data, then they can be really valuable. So we see democratization in the industry is probably the biggest obstacle. Guiding Global found that 69% of businesses do not have the talent to meet their goals, and only 20.6% have established data cultures within their business. So still 80% are missing that. Business users and data people don't always speak the same language, which is a huge problem. Centralized teams often become a blocker to decisions if everything needs to go through them. So they actually become a problem. They block agility as opposed to adding to it. It can be very difficult for companies to decide whether they should in-house or outsource data problems. Candice, right?
Yeah, again, 100%. In terms of the same language, speaking the same language, you touched upon, having training sessions. It is really communication. The more business people and data people can share ideas, discuss. Data people need to talk more about business. They need to be more interested in where the business is going, and having people in the middle, that is really helpful. That's typically analysts, very business orientated, or data champions within the business function. So someone like you, Oliver, in marketing, but really data savvy. So those are the connectors. So spot those if you are, a sizable organization, make the most out of them. And then centralized versus decentralized teams, there's always a good debate which way you should go about it. There's pros and cons of both. A hybrid approach is actually, where we see the best. So you have data teams, in a structural kind of way. They're in one team. They can share best practices. They share the same code base. So you don't build duplications. So if there's a model already existing, let's expand on that. But then have the data people embedded in terms of business functions. So if you're a data analyst, you're embedded into the finance team, you have a data analyst embedded to the marketing team. So it is centralized, but yet at the same time, they're embedded. So that's where we see. But then again, every organization is different. So experiment to see what works the best. When to in-house, when to outsource. This is a great, debate. But things that you need fast-tracked, you need very unique experiences that probably one-off. That's always a good place to outsource. Get things up and running really quickly, and then you can train, like you said, a really smart mid-level data person, and this person can grow into like head of analytics and can help the business day in, day out. As an agency, we're not going to be there day to day. So you really need someone owning this piece from the inside. And this person typically start as a analytics lead or a data analyst, and they quickly grow into head of analytics or director of data. So we see that a lot. At that point, having an external agency to help in terms of specific questions, strategic input, that could be a good way to go about it. And it's the most, time and cost-effective way for companies.
I was very surprised when I looked through it. So there was literally a 50-50 split on people deciding to in-house or outsource analysis or engineering. Is there one of those things that makes more sense than the other?
Again, depends on the use case. Engineering more so, I would say, because we call it, our VP of engineering, Adrian, always call it the data plumbing. And with data plumbing, you'll need to plumb once, right? Once it's set up, you just have to maintain it. It becomes a lot easier. So if you're setting up new data sources, especially the tricky one, it makes sense to bring in outside help. Do it once, and it's always there, so you can make the most out of it. Data analysis, it's good to get an agency in to help you structure how to approach a particular analytics problem, but it's typically something you should do in-house, because an in-house analyst would understand your problem. They're there day in, day out. They can, poke the business to say, hey, I need an actual piece of information to complete my analysis. So I would say engineering is probably more of a situation, engineering, and then analysis, unless you're looking at LTV predictions, those large-scale analytical problems, then it's probably better done in-house.
Great stuff. So our recommendations on this: build your analytics capability iteratively and expand resources in line with customer growth, because that makes the most sense. On a technology front, think of fun ways such as hackathons or challenges, so that people can better learn your tool set. Training sessions can be quite dull, and people see it as an addition to their job and not necessarily part of their core role. So any fun way of doing that, I think, is really important. Befriend marketing to display that information in an interesting way. And on the people side of things, documentation and best practices are key when growing your team in a sustainable way. You need somebody else to come in who's completely new and has never seen your code before and understand it really quickly. But this is probably the key area that gets skipped when we see it scale. We'll just end on a quick quote from Christian at Rivery. He said, we got a lot of value working with agencies. They bring in expertise we don't have quickly and cost effectively. The key is to help onboard to our business goals.